Welcome to the most important week of the year for the podcast industry. Welcome to Podcast Movement 2025.
All right, welcome, everybody. This is, you probably have this as a talk with Traci and I. I'm Jenn Trepeck, host of the podcast Salad with a Side of Fries and co-founder of the Podcast Professionals Association. We're going to ask you guys to come down and sit with us. We will not be offended if you have to get up and walk away, but it's going to create a much better experience for all of us. So come hang out. We're going to do most of this as a Q&A. So we have a couple questions to get the ball rolling. And then really we want to open it up to all of you. First, though, just to get a sense of who's here, how many of you have businesses in the podcast space or you serve podcasters? Excellent. How many of you are hosts and creators yourselves? Okay, great. Awesome. So we're going to try to cover both pieces of that today. Let's start with quick introductions from our panel. So your name, what you do in the world, and your expertise for the purposes of this panel.
Hi, I'm Traci DeForge. I am the founder and CEO of Produce Your Podcast. We are a full-service audio and video production and audience growth marketing agency. I am also the co-founder of the Podcast Professionals Association. But for the purpose of the panel today, I'll be able to answer any questions regarding production and especially any focus on audience growth, monetization, brand, and sponsorships.
Hi, I'm Todd Cochran. I'm founder and CEO of Blueberry Podcasting. I'm a 20-year podcaster, 2015 inductee into the Podcast Hall of Fame, and I guess all-around old guy in the podcasting space. So there's not a lot I haven't seen.
I'm Gordon Firemark, also an old guy in the podcasting space, although not quite as old in the space as Todd. I've been producing Entertainment Law Update for 17 years, and I also have another show called Legit Podcast Pro. I'm known as the podcast lawyer. I'm an entertainment attorney for 34 years now, and I'm also have some training programs and coaching and things like that for folks to around the business side of their business. So, thanks.
Excellent. So the whole talk of this show is about the podcast industry really growing up. And so I want to ask this question and have everybody answer it first as a host and then next as sort of an industry professional. So the first piece is, what do you think are the biggest changes that you need to keep on your radar as the podcast industry grows up? Again, in terms of being a host. Traci, you want to?
Yeah, great question. So I just recently launched my fourth podcast, which is the Growth Accelerator podcast, and it's a vast difference between I launched my first podcast in March of 2016. And one of the things that we really focused on when we launched the Growth Accelerator podcast a few weeks ago was really honing in on the SEO piece of the keywords in the show description, making sure the episode titles and the episode descriptions were all SEO optimized, because it's becoming more and more important. You've got to focus on great content. You've got to focus on great audio and video production, but you also need to really hone in and focus on that SEO aspect to be sure that people that are searching for the show and the content that you're creating, that they're able to find it.
Excellent. Todd?
Having a show that's approaching 21 years, the most important thing is to stay relevant and being able to, I guess for a better word, teach an old dog new tricks. So you have to stay current on what's going on in the podcasting space, how things are changing in social. So, if you've just started in the last couple of years, you're pretty much up to speed on what's happening in the social media side. So it's one of those things, though, that as time progresses, you always got to continue to look at your show format, make sure that you're meeting the expectations of your audience, and more importantly, continue to deliver value. So as the show gets older and longer and more episodes in, and where your voice has really been found at that point, you really got your production down, you need to figure out, okay, what's the next step to take to the next level? And the best way to do that is listen to a lot of other podcasts in your genre. especially shows that are in maybe that top 20 list on Apple. Sample those shows, and what you're going to find is probably one or two nuggets from each of those shows that you might be able to employ on your own podcast. So I always listen to all of the current shows that are in the top of my genre. In fact, I listen to over 100 podcasts every 2 weeks from a sampling standpoint, but I also keep those shows that are in my genre at the top of my list and listen to see how I can improve my own show.
I love that. So tactical. Gordon.
Well, I think some of the biggest changes in the space, one is obviously big companies coming in and really driving a lot of the production and honestly distribution of things. And the technology has gotten so much more refined, easier to use. It's easy. I mean, when you started podcasting, you were hand coding an RSS feed, right? Those kinds of things. So that it's gotten so much easier. The playing field is even more level than it's ever been in that regard. As far as being a good host, I think listening to the quote competition, although not thinking of it as competition, is important. It's there's room for everybody. The rising tide lifts all boats, as they say. But also, the good news, I guess, here is that the basics, the fundamentals of good storytelling, good journalism haven't changed. And those are the things to study if you want to really, really shine in this industry.
Excellent. And then thinking about this, as an industry professional, how do you stay at the forefront? What are the tools, resources, or things that you do to stay, at the forefront and knowing everything, not just that's happening, but potentially is what's next? Todd, shall we start with you?
Sure. It's I run the podcast awards as well as what I do for my day job and the podcast. And what that has allowed me to do is look at a lot of shows across many genres for many years. And one thing is, I used to come up with a report on how bad metadata was on podcasts. It'd just blow me away. I would go to a show site. First of all, could I find the podcast? Number two, was there more than 3 sentences of show notes? And, were they doing anything really to feed the animal out there known Google and now OpenAI and other stuff? So what has changed is there's no excuse anymore for horrible show notes, horrible titles, not having episode art, all these things I consider to be a 101 basic thing you need to be doing. You can use these AI tools now to help you and having good titles, SEO summaries, extensive summaries, chapters, episode art, all these things that you need to have to feed the beast. Because if you don't, the chances of you being found later, even though you're being found within the podcast apps, but how are the people discovering you? And what you've done with your new show is optimize. So this is part of the stuff that you can do now that anyone can do by saying, hey, ChatGPT, here's my transcript. Analyze my transcript and create me a 500-word summary, highlight the best part of the show, and suggest a title. This is something that takes, you can build a GPT and have this pre-built, and you'll get amazing results. Sure, you're going to edit the summary because it's not going to be completely in your voice, but if you run that summary again and again, pretty soon it gets to know you, and it'll get better. So there's no excuse now for having, I'll just say it frankly, piss poor show notes. If I go to your website and you have piss poor show notes, you don't care about growing your show. And if you call me and say, oh, I'm having problems growing my show, which happens 5 times, 10 times a week, I always start on your website. And if you don't have a website, why?
Okay, great. Yes.
So you were asking about how to sort of keep on top of the industry and what's going on.
As an industry professional, yeah.
Well, I think there's I won't call it a glut, but there's an awful lot of tools out there. So I would say staying on top of what's going on, there are the trade publications, Pod News, sounds profitable, and I can't remember the others.
Podcast Business Journal even.
Right, Business Journal, exactly. I think it's good to read those and just sort of keep an eye on what's happening. Obviously, when you discover your own itch, something that isn't working right, looking for the solutions and going down the rabbit hole. I consume way too much content about the industry itself. Well, partly because that's who I serve, but I think, allow yourself the grace to do that and don't feel guilty about diving in and doing a deep dive on something that's got you wondering, because you can bet there's other people wondering, and if you can then share it, you're serving the whole community. I think that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Traci.
So I think, too, on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, I think keeping up with the trades and not being scared to try new technology, too. I think, don't be intimidated by it and just really jump in and really have the curiosity to be innovative. I think it starts with that. But then also stay connected. These conferences are amazing to meet and connect with people, but it's what happens in between the conferences really where the magic happens. So find an association, Podcast Professionals Association, yes, shameless plug, but you're looking at members right here. You want to be with your like-minded peers and colleagues so that you can share and get out of that isolated bubble. Most people are working remotely. If you own your own business, a lot of times you just feel like you're having to reinvent the wheel all the time, and you don't have to do that. There are people who are really excited in this industry to be able to give you a leg up and shortcut your learning curve. You just have to be curious and willing to be open to reach out and connect and stay connected.
Excellent. And I think, yes, community is so important. So before we open it up, I have one more question. And again, I'll throw this out. You probably all have opinions on this, but I think, Todd, you brought up AI. And we're moving, Gordon, you brought up big companies. So part of this is a question of ethics and integrity. And as an industry, do we need a code of ethics, or how do we continue to stay credible and ethical in how we operate our own businesses, whether it's as a creator or a service professional in this industry?
That's great. I actually teach a media ethics class, so this is perfect for me. Thank you. But I'll try to be brief.
You're welcome. Right.
Well, we have 17 minutes and 21.
No. They have questions.
I don't have enough time. I think whether we need a code of ethics, I don't know. I think we all need to have our own moral code about how we're going to do things and what we can do. But I think that operating from a code, personally, if you're doing real journalism, and I'd say a lot of folks don't realize that they're doing what should be treated as real journalism, there are codes of ethics in that business already, and I think it makes good sense to try to adhere to that as much as possible. It is a different medium, so there are going to be some need to change things. But thinking about the audience experience, I think, is really key. We're here to serve the audience. Yes, we're in business, we're doing what we do, making content, but if you're not thinking about serving your audience, then it's really just masturbation. And are we allowed to say that?
We did.
Yeah, so
We went there.
So maybe we need a little bit of a code of ethics, and certainly as a community, we should also speak up when someone is not behaving properly. I think that's really important. Call them out, say something, and rally the troops.
Yeah.
I think we've all listened to content where you kind of get that icky feeling. You listen to something, you kind of don't get a good vibe. People can smell fraud. People can smell someone that is not authentic. So, my point of view is always be authentic, be the real you. What you see here is what you get on the floor and what you get in my show. I'm just, be the same person. And when that happens, I think people will come to love you more because they know you're not being plastic, and that's the most important thing. And it maybe's not related to AI, but I think what people are going to seek out is genuine voices. I don't know about you, but I go on YouTube now and I hear something and I say, oh, that's some auto-generated voice. I back out, dumb vote it. I'm seeking personalities. I'm seeking people that are giving real opinions because we're already having enough stuff shoved at us that is not real, that has not been generated by a live human being. So just be genuine and we'll all break out.
We talk a lot about imposter syndrome. I think we ought to also be talking about fake expert syndrome.
Yes.
That was where I was going. Perfect,
Have at it.
perfect segue. I think you need to use the tools to support your brain, but don't use the tools to replace your brain. You have your own perspectives, you have your own insights, you have your own experience. Leverage that and utilize your voice to change a conversation in your industry. But do that with the level of expertise that you bring to the conversation. And it's so easy to maybe, I'd like to write a book about this and create an outline. But if you don't really understand the content that you're going to be putting in between those subtitles and that outline content, you will not be able to sustain that level of expertise or expert status you've created for yourself. You need to be recognized as an expert for the experience and the authenticity and the genuineness and your perspective that you bring to those conversations, to industry talks, to your blog content, to your podcast content. Everywhere you're sharing your voice, share your voice first, and then use the tools to organize it, summarize it, and repurpose it in ways that make it more efficient, but don't start with it.
And I'm just going to add to that. I think err on the side of disclosure, right? More information has rarely hurt anyone, right? So let's tell our audiences what to expect, what we're doing, that this is an ad, that these brands are supporting the show, and this is how we're helping to continue to create this for you and those kinds of things. I think disclosure, agreements, and all of those pieces. Yeah, Gordon.
One of my pet peeves, speaking of disclosure, is the guest who has paid to be on the show and there's never any mention of that fact. That is an ad. It's a program-length advertising, and the audience has a right to know if this guy who just put out a book paid $1,000 to be on. I mean, I don't think anybody here is going to do that, but you need to say so. It's disclosure rules, and there is a law about it that is observed in the breach mostly these days.
Excellent. All right. Well, maybe best practice for disclosure. Do you believe that, a note in the episode notes is enough, or that it would serve as to be part of the content?
No, definitely not enough to do it according to the law. You need to put it in the same form that the listener, the experience is occurring. So if they're reading, then a written disclosure. If they're watching, it should be on screen as well as in the audio. If it's an audio only, then it needs to be in the audio. And work it into the conversation. It doesn't have to be a big, heavy, now a word from our sponsor all the time. It can be, hey, our sponsor for the show is XYZ, and today our guest is the president of XYZ company.
Yep.
Thanks for being here. And then move into the interview.
Excellent. All right, opening it up to questions. Go for it. They're going to come over with mics for everybody.
Thank you so much. Gordon, this might be mainly for you, but for anybody, please. So my podcast is not about music, but going down it's a part of my passion is music. And you probably know where I'm going with this.
See me roll my eyes?
Yeah. Licensing and being able to play something without obviously falling into the legal trap down the line. What is advice to someone that's relatively small in the podcast field as far as that goes? Obviously, if you join a network, I'm assuming they have their own license, right? Or no?
Most don't.
Most don't. Okay.
I mean, some of the big platforms, Spotify, YouTube,
right,
TikTok, they have their licensing stuff set up. But even there, if you cross off onto another platform, you may run into some issues. Look, the best practice is to get permission, and that means contacting the owners of the material. With music, it's especially hard because you have two copyrights at least. Two copyrights, and there could be many, many owners of that. So it can be a real tail-chasing exercise. For the new starting low-budget operation, the advice probably is maybe try something else. Use public domain. Use what do you call it, royalty-free music and stuff like that, which, by the way, doesn't mean it's free. It means you pay once. You don't have to keep paying. So, unfortunately, music is still a big trouble spot a big hurdle in this industry.
And from the hosting side, every day I get at least 20 to 40 emails from Spotify saying we've removed this episode because it's had music in it. And we go back and sample the music, and it's just intro music. So the podcaster then has to go and file a counterclaim with Spotify saying, hey, I have a license to do this. Too many of those strikes, Spotify just removes you. So I'm just going to be very frank with you. They are brutal.
And
They're
they don't
brutal.
care about fair
They
use.
don't care. And they don't care if you have a license, you play music, you're out. That episode is gone. So just be aware. They're pretty strict.
Talk about the music, don't play the music.
I always say, when in doubt, don't.
There you go.
And we even had somebody we were working with who her podcast was all about TV and movies, and she used the name of a show in her episode title, and YouTube came back at her
And took
with
it
a
down.
problem. Yeah. So
What about clips from other podcasts? Is it work relatively the same way, or is it something that's a little bit more freewheeling, ethical kind of a situation?
It's the same issue. It's less likely to get caught, less likely to have a problem with it. But
Right.
technically, still, you need permission.
And if you look at the RSS feed from another show, sometimes the licensing in there is listed like Creative Commons. There might be a Creative Commons license. So, there's fair use doctrine, which he can respond to. But again, always attribute, always, link back. That'll help. The podcaster will love it if you do that, if you've used a clip. But look at the RSS feed and look for copyright, and you often will find out what the status for each show is.
I'd say the good news is most hosts of other shows would be delighted to have you play a little clip, assuming you're being positive about
Respectful,
theirs.
You know, I mean, this also came up. I had a guest on my show who wanted to take the raw video and break it up, and I sent them agreement that anytime they use part of that video, it needs to have the attribution back to the show name, the show title, at a minimum my name. And we went back and forth. They were part of a bigger organization. Their lawyers wouldn't agree to it, and I didn't release the video to them.
Hello.
You're
Hey, my name is Brianna. As we all know, video is becoming really big on YouTube. I've been coming across different networks now that are taking like podcasts, videocasts on like Roku TV, Amazon, things of that nature. My problem is with that is like, how are people going to find these type of podcasts on these networks? What do you guys think about those options?
I've worked with them in a different context, not specifically for podcasts, but for other kinds of content. And a majority of them, you are paying them to put your show there, and then you're getting a rev share of the advertising that they then sell. So they're not concerned with people finding it, because their main revenue source is us paying them to put our content there. So I was just going to say, read those agreements really carefully, and you're exactly right. Most likely when somebody's saying, I want to choose to listen to this show or find this show on my TV through Roku or whatever, they're searching by name most often, has been my experience.
The other variant of the model you just described is what it used to be done in radio, vanity radio, where you would pay for the airtime and then it'd be up to you to sell ads. And there's this much inventory in the show, and that's how much you have to sell, and you hope for the best. And then they're not doing anything at all to promote you. So be careful.
Go for it.
My questions are feedback from yours, actually. So, we're also new to the space. We've been on YouTube, and we're just now gone to audio. So my question is, if we have somebody originally write your song, like one of my co-host's partner, plays acoustic guitar, so we were just going to have him write us a custom song for our intro. Would that get flagged on Spotify, you think, too? Really?
Right? It's amazing. You might fly under the radar.
Yeah.
And what they'll do is they'll send you a basically notice that the episode's been taken down because they detected music. You'll have to respond with the license to get the episode reestablished. You may have to do that for every episode. It's hard to say. They've become much more strict. I'm amazed. For years and years, there was nothing. And now I probably see 20 a day that come in. I'm CC'd as well as you'll know, because you'll get the email from Spotify. They'll say, hey, we've removed episode because of XYZ. Now, there's some obvious things. Someone's played Taylor Swift or done something dumb. Those shows get taken down and they won't get back. But there is an actual part of the terms of service agreement that Spotify makes you sign to be on their platform is that you'll put no music in your podcast. So that's in their terms. So they have every right to remove anything that has music.
You might get away with, like, first line of your show notes saying original music used by arrangement or by, something like that. But I don't even know if
I
they're
was gonna say
looking
that
at that.
and
They use a logarithm.
Right? Yeah.
There's a computer that says, oh, there's music.
Well, and the good news is an algorithm isn't going to detect original music that was composed for your show. It may detect that there's music, and I just don't know how aggressive they're being about that.
But I think credits, right, at the beginning and end of your show, and then also in your episode notes, like if somebody is concerned and they go look for it, you got to make it super easy that this was, written and performed specifically for this show by this person. So you're giving all the attribution.
Are they the only ones that do that? Like
Yeah.
iHeart and Apple does not?
No one else does it. I have never seen a takedown notice from Apple or anyone for music.
Because I watch a lot of podcasts and
Yeah.
they have lots of intros.
And you
so
got to remember,
not on
though,
Spotify.
if you're on YouTube, there's different licensing
Yeah.
that you get that you're allowed that cannot cross over into the audio.
Okay.
But I would say also, just based on how you describe the relationship, I would have something in writing because partnerships dissolve, relationships break up. So I would get something in writing that you save in Dropbox or Google Drive that from the artist who wrote it, because it's all great when you're all friends and lovers, but when things fall apart and you still want to use that music, that's really actually could be a bigger challenge than Spotify catching it if you're under the radar. I would just make sure you protect yourself and have something in writing from that musician that created it that has given you the permission to use it so that you don't have any issues if the relationship was to dissolve.
That answer was brought to you by podcastlawforms.com.
I'm a paid ambassador. No, I'm just kidding.
Hi, I'm Stephen Calabria from the Mount Sinai Health System in New York. Let's say you have the opposite problem of the one mentioned by the gentleman earlier, helming the podcasting of a large, well-known, august institution with wide reach that covers multiple fields and is relatively new to podcasting but has its fields basically to itself. What partnership strategies do you recommend that differ from those of smaller shows and institutions?
Traci.
So are you, I'd like to clarify the question. Are you talking about partnerships in terms of brand partnerships to sponsor the show?
Correct. And just all of the above.
Okay, so what you would want to look at a lot of times when we're talking about sponsorships and advertising, what we want to look at first, and no matter what the size of your show is where is your warm network and the people that are already doing business with you and that you're already doing business with, because that's the first place to start when you're connecting for conversations around brand partnership outreach for a couple reasons. One is they're easier conversations to have because you already have them in your warm network. But second, they're likely already aligned with your content, and therefore your audience would respect and appreciate them being having an implied affiliation with your content. So you really want to think about always when you're entertaining brands and partnerships, what's in it for your audience? Is it going to be something that's disruptive to your content and to your audience, or is it something that's going to feel like it has good synergy and that would bring value to your audience? So that's always, no matter the size of your show, that's really important. And then in the case of healthcare, you may have more restrictions and compliance issues and things like that. So you always want to take that into consideration. And then there's a lot of opportunity in the healthcare space for pharma dollars because they are very excited and interested to spend money to get their drugs and knowledge around their products and services out into the audience that you may be reaching, which might, in their opinion, would probably be a coveted audience. But then you have to determine if you're aligned with accepting pharma money or not. So a lot of times what it comes down to is that ethics, integrity, what's in it for your audience, does it serve you, does it help and serve and grow your show?
Pharma ad deals are, in my opinion, the hardest and worst and most lawyer intensive. So, they can be very, very profitable, but wow, you get into, 40-page agreements when you're dealing pharma ads versus a 2-page agreement if you're doing HelloFresh. So, it's really that extreme.
Yeah.
So we did come to the end, but I have a question.
Yeah.
the last one. So
Okay.
this question is for the attorney. When as a creator, when do we know we need an attorney? We need to get you on board.
By the time you realize it, you might be too late.
Darn it. So I guess you're saying we should be starting with you.
Well, I mean, start your show.
It has to be in use.
But
you know?
sooner rather than later, talk, or at least inquire, do some investigation. Follow me on YouTube. I do give a lot of tips and things like that. And then don't hesitate to reach out.
So that brings us to how to wrap this up. So share with everybody how to connect with you, stay in touch, learn more about everything you offer.
All right. So it's Gordon Firemark, and I'm blessed with a good distinctive name. GordonFiremark.com is sort of the home hub for things. The YouTube channel is G Firemark, and that's how you find me on most social media. So
I'm easy. I'm Todd at blueberry.com, blueberry without the E's, because we couldn't afford the E's. They were $2 million, so Todd at blueberry.com.
ProduceYourPodcast.com. You'll find resources, blogs. You can connect with me there and see samples of our work and all of the different ideas of how to integrate audience growth strategies into your show.
And I'm Jenn Trepeck. All social media, I am at Jenn Trepeck, JENN Trepeck, and my website is asaladwithasideofries.com. Thank you guys for hanging with us to the very end of Podcast Movement. We appreciate you.